Anybody wants a dumbbell just to exercise while reading? No? Okay, I'll keep it to myself here. But obviously there's a play on the words there, bodybuilding, because we're looking to build up the body of Christ. And that's why the theme for the camp was Stronger Together. The point that he's driving home there is the one of unity, the one of understanding that God has set apart us to be different, but different not as in not needing each other. And last week I spoke about a quote from a former late bishop from South Africa, Desmond Tutu, and he said there that Christianity is a religion of unity in diversity, not uniformity. And last week I emphasized something that we also spoke about at the camp, and that is it takes a village to raise a family. It's important. I've got a lot of friends from Fiji, and I know our Fijian friends here will tell us as well that when we speak about taking a village to raise a child, that's exactly what happens. Am I right? I mean, when we grew up as well, back in the days, I don't know if you guys had that, and if we went out of the house, and if we did anything wrong, the neighbor had the right to spank us. That's how we grew up, in the village mentality. Am I right? I don't know whether it was like that here, but obviously we don't spank anymore. If the authorities are listening, we abide by the law. Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah, Jolene does the spanking, not me. I'm the passive. You heard what I said last week when I said when I told Jolene I'm the head of the house. She says, "Yeah, you may be the head, but I'm the neck, because without the neck, the head can't turn." So, Tanya, I see Tanya's here. We need some marriage counseling there. If you can help out with that there. At the camp, I spoke about one of the things I learned when I did grief counseling. And the lecturer said to us that when you are doing grief counseling, you need to be a Pole. And I clarified it wasn't being someone from Poland, but he wants us to be a Pole. And then when he looked and he expanded into the illustration, he said, what does a pole do? The pole just stands there and you lean on the pole. That is all. The pole just gives you support. And he says, this is what we need to be to people that are out there, that are going through challenges, that are going through struggles, is to be a pole to them. And we came up with some lovely acronyms. You heard Lynn share one. And if you look at what I've got up there, we had this challenge at the camp, come up with an acronym for pole. And one of the ones was a person of love and encouragement. Another one was prevent others living empty. A person offering love and encouragement. That's all we are wanting to do. You hear some horrific stories as well in the first world of how, people that are living side by side in apartments and they don't see this person, and he goes 2 months, 3 months. We were in New South Wales about a year and a bit ago. There was a terrible article that appeared that this person was dead in the apartment next door for like 5 months. Nobody knew. Because this is the society that we live in. We're living in silos. We're living isolated lives. And this is where the point that Jesus makes about love your neighbor. John 13, 34 and 35, Jesus says, by this shall all men know that you are my disciples. Not how well you preach, not how well you sing, but by the love that you have for one another. And that is important, and that is the essence of what it is to be a pole. And what we highlighted was that every part of the human body works not for themselves. The hand does not look to feed only themselves. The hand does not look to work for itself, the foot, and all the other parts of the body, because they are there for the upkeep and the well-being and the health of the whole body. And I've got a verse up there in blue that again is a summary of what the Apostle Paul is telling us, verse 20. But now indeed there are many members, yet one body. And that's a word that will come through very often in our series, the number one. One. God is calling us to be one. When you look at the Lord's Prayer, everybody goes to Matthew chapter 6 and we know the famous prayer, our Father who art in heaven, give us this day our daily bread. But a lot of commentators say the Lord's Prayer really is in John 17. When Jesus says, Father, I pray that you make them one as we are one. They're again driving home the essence of what it is. I spoke to you about the Maori people in New Zealand and what they said is the essence of life. It is the people, it is the people, it is the people. And this is why God came down to this earth. He came down, God so loved the world, He loved the people, He loved us. So it's important that sometimes we got to lose an argument and win a brother. I'd rather do that. I'd rather lose an argument and win someone than win an argument and lose someone. Because at the end of the day, God is in control. Families go through strife. Families go through turmoil. Sometimes families don't talk to each other. But last week I shared this important point. Rather than hold a grudge, hold a conversation. And that's so important. Sometimes it's a misunderstanding. And I'm speaking from experience in my life. God's not interested on who's right and who's wrong. He's looking on who's strong. Who is the strong one? It's from Galatians chapter 6. And there the admonition from Paul is, you who are spiritually strong, uphold the weak. And this is where God does not want us to be in contentions, in strife. He wants us, yes, we speak the truth in love, as we spoke about last week. But we make sure that we speak. And if I had to ask you, what's the action word in Ephesians 4:15 when it says, speak the truth in love? The action word, the verb is speak. And how is it to be done? In love. Is to speak the truth in love, to give the tough love. As a parent, that's what we are called to do. Sometimes our children may not like us for that. But God has called us. I say this to my kids. I read a nice saying, and I try to say that to them as well. Parenting is not a democracy. There was no vote held that your mom and I were voted in to be your parents. It's a God-given responsibility. And they talk about allowances and everything. I said, yeah, in our house we have allowances. We allow the kids to eat our food. We allow them to live in our house. We allow them to stay and all of that. So we give them a lot of allowances. Obviously, I'm making a joke now. Because as parents, yes, we want to be friendly with our children, but we're not their friends. We have a God-given responsibility. Similarly, in the church, every part of the church has a responsibility. The leadership, the eldership, the pastor, we have a responsibility. And the responsibility is before God. How do we stand before God? We can look a blind eye, we can turn the other way, and we can wink at people when they're sinning. But when we stand before God, God says, I put you there. What did you do? Obviously, again, in love. But it's understanding that Paul is rebuking pride in these verses. That don't think that you're better than somebody else. Hey, to the hand, don't think you're better than the foot. Don't think that you are better than anybody else in the body. We may have different functions. The pastor, the elders, the ushers, and all the other ministries. But none of us are better than the rest of us. We all have a function to function in. When you look at team sport, I love team sport. I love individual sport as well, tennis and all of that. But team sport, if you want to build character in your children, you know that. You introduce them to team sport. If you get a chance, you just Google John Wooden and you see the quotes that he comes up with. And his big thing was to celebrate the assist. He was a basketball coach. And his thing was to celebrate the assist, the pass before you take the shot to score. And he made it a rule in his team that if you dunk the ball, if you score in the basketball, you make sure you acknowledge the guy that passed you the ball, even if it's a thumbs up or a wink or a nod. And one of the guys goes, but coach, I'm the one scoring. And he goes, yeah, but you would not have scored if he didn't pass you the ball. And this is where it's so important now, through John Wooden's initiative. You find in sport now, rather than having goals scored or tries scored, they also have assists. Because everybody wants to be number one in the world today. Everybody wants to be number one. And that's what the world teaches you. Numero uno. Nobody wants to be number 2 or number 3 or number 4. Everybody wants to be at the top because that's the culture. That's what the world teaches us. But what does the word teach us? If you look at Matthew 23, 11 and 12, Jesus says, he who considers himself greatest amongst you must be a servant. A servant. And in all the leadership that we learn from Jesus' style, the one that is synonymous and unique to Jesus' style of leadership is that of servanthood. That the Son of God did not come to be served, but to serve. So it's important to know that Paul is driving home the point that in spite of its many members or parts, the body functions in unity. There isn't a hierarchy. There isn't a pecking order. Because in the natural body, there is no pecking order. There is no hierarchy. So too is God speaking to us to say in the body of Christ. Yes, we're unique. We have different functions and all of that, but we are not to usurp that on anybody else. No one is more important than the other. Our roles may differ, but our significance is equal. There's a verse in 25 that says it clearly. Because remember, one of the aims in Paul writing to the Corinthians in this first letter was to overcome division. There was division that was taking place at the time. And Paul says this here in verse 25, should be no schism in the body, but that the members should have the same care for one another. So God is rooting out the problem. And the problem, the roadblock, the barrier that hinders unity is division. And God is saying to us, don't be like that cancer cell. Don't come in and work for your own initiative. Don't work to promote yourself. Because Jesus goes on to say in Matthew 23:12 that whoever exalts himself, God will humble. But whoever humbles himself, God will exalt. And that's my encouragement to you as well in life, at your workplace or wherever. You may be looking for a promotion. You may be the one doing all the work, but you're getting overlooked and somebody else is taking the glory. Understand this here. God sees. You know, Psalm 75 says, promotion comes neither from the east, the west, the north, the south. Promotion comes from above. But you work unto the Lord. Don't worry about anybody else and what they say and what they do and all of that. You work unto the Lord. Colossians 3:23 and 24 says, work unto the Lord with your whole heart, because God rewards justly. There's an illustration that I shared at the camp, a true story of an American fighter pilot that was shot down in 1976 during the Vietnam War, in captive by the Viet Cong. And they were horrendous people in the terms of how they treated their prisoners. So this guy's name was Charlie Plumb. After the war, there's a prisoner exchange and he comes back to the US and he's sitting at a coffee shop with his wife. And as they're having the coffee shop, he notices there's a guy watching him. And after a while, the guy gets up and he approaches Charlie Plumb and he says to him, "You are Charlie Plumb." And he goes, "Yes, I'm Charlie Plumb." And he says, "You were shot down in 1976. You were aboard the USS Kitty Hawk." And by that time, Charlie Plumb is getting suspicious now. Is this a spy? Has he come to take him out? And the guy goes on to say, "But you were exchanged and you're back on US grounds." And Charlie Plumb was about to punch him. And then the guy says something profound. Because Charlie Plumb asked him, "How do you know that?" And he says, "Because I was the guy that packed your parachute." And Charlie Plumb staggers. And then he reaches his hand out to shake his hand and hug him and say, "Thank you. I always wanted to meet you and to say thank you for packing my parachute." And he goes on to say that in the world that we live in, where everyone wants to climb the ladder and everyone wants to get to the top, sometimes people cut corners and all of that. Thank God that this guy who was in some place where he was not getting the recognition outwardly, openly, for that job. Imagine working in a factory and your job is just to pack parachutes. This on that assembly line. It can get boring. It can get mundane. But it's an important role. It's an important function. Realized when you parachute out and you go to pull that cord, and thank God the parachute opens. You know, in the world that we live in today, and especially in the church context, God is calling us to pack people's parachutes. God is calling us to support, to encourage, to help, to be a pole to people. To understand that there should be no divisions. Thank God this guy didn't pack the parachute and say, I should be a pilot and I should be the one flying there. I'm not going to pack this parachute properly. Let me make a hole in this parachute. Thank God he didn't do that, because he knew what it was to be part of a team. And today, wherever you are, whatever you're doing in the church, whether you're greeting at the door, whether you're making the coffee, whether you're cleaning in the church, understand that you're doing it unto the Lord. And that role is as equally as important as any other role.